Well, our first panel. Now, I won't ask Nick to introduce himself because he's just done a long introduction, but I am going to ask our next three panelists to introduce themselves very briefly by name, what they do, and what their burning passion in data is. And then I'll also be bringing Andrew in from online. Andrew, good morning. I'll come to you in just a moment. So, Kylie.
Good morning, I'm Kylie Horomia. I'm the Head of Industry Transformation at WayBeyond. For my burning passion in data, to be honest, it's probably just to get people started and get on the digital journey. And rather than talk about the outcome, just really get them involved in how it can help them and how we can support them through that process. So yeah, just get started, people. That's all I ask.
Thank you. Chris.
Morena, Rod. My name is Chris Claridge. I'm the Chair of the Trust Alliance, and I'm also the CEO of Potatoes New Zealand. My burning passion are the three key food groups, potatoes, chips and crisps, and as well, thought I'd get the plug in early.
Oh my God.
My burning passion is making sure that farmers can control, permission and share their data so the originators of the data have an element of control over who gets what.
Fine, thank you very much indeed. And I must say you're looking awfully well on your very specific diet.
Look, potatoes are the total food. You can eat them. It makes you happy.
Yeah.
You asked.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam.
Hi. I'm Sam Ratnason. I'm a work stream lead at MPI, setting up data definition platform, and also a policy consultant in MFE for freshwater and such things. My passion is really, my personal one is to find out ways to demystify data, to be honest, try to make sure that farmers have an easier time of sharing and entering data in a way that we all can understand and they can understand and industry can understand, and then to align policies so we don't have siloed policies in place. So we'll see how that all goes. Thanks.
And Andrew, good morning to you. Do say hello, and where are you, if I may ask, other than in your garden?
That's right. I wish I was in my garden, or maybe I don't, because it's quite cold in New Zealand, I understand today, and I'm about 50 kilometres north of London, where they're going through a bit of a heat wave. It seems to be the UK summer this week. So I am the Managing Director of Rezare Systems, which I've run for about 16 or 17 years, also the Chief Technology Officer of Map of Agriculture Group. And look, my feeling is we often talk about data as though it's some generic amorphous sort of thing, but I think farm businesses actually run on having real information about what's happening. It's the only way we'll get to the bottom of sort of sustainability and profitability and all those necessary things. And to that end, I spend my time helping people collaborate around data interoperability and also building tools that do this stuff for real.
Fine, thank you very much indeed. A very big hand, please, for our panelists. Thanks. We've only got 21 minutes, and you play a very important role in this too. So please put questions to us, and I'm going to see questions coming up on one of these screens. So I'm very keen to get some of your questions into the discussion, please. Thank you. I'm going to ask a very big question to start with. In the balance of things here, do we have a people challenge or a technology challenge in terms of moving this forward?
I can start with that. I think it's both, really. The capabilities of technologies today are pretty extensive. Like many of the things that we might want to do with data, we can do, but actually making them available in a way that's easy to work with and is actually sufficiently, there's low enough friction that people actually choose to interact with the data in a way that actually gives them the full benefit is very much a people challenge, because if you set a really high bar, or you create a fear of data, or there's a fear of how the data might be used, and if you have a binary choice, for example, between you either keep the data completely secret or you expose it completely, keeping it completely secret is generally you deny yourself most of the value that could be leveraged through it. Making it completely available, people are usually terrified of. So there's sort of talking about data sovereignty and data sharing, there's massive shades of grey through this, that people have to be able to participate with it at exactly the right levels that they want to in any given particular context that they might be sharing it. And I think you can achieve that technologically, but to do it in an elegant way and make it a usable solution is a people challenge, I think.
Thanks.
Can I add?
Yes, please do, Sam. I know you're not going to be short of a word or two.
So, I think the technology is the easiest bit. It's so much out there, and if we actually know what we want to do, the technology is there, and just the willingness to do it is the hurdle. But I think another point, rather than maybe people or organization challenge, is the complexity challenge. To know what you're going to touch on first and what you're going to solve first, and to put it in a language and put it in a presentation that people can actually understand what you're trying to achieve. If we manage to do that sort of step by step, which I hope we are trying, and many people in this group and in this room are trying to do, then I think we are achieving something. So herding the cats, yes, definitely a challenge, but I think herding them with a clear vision and in a language that is not technology language will help us.
I think we've got a massive opportunity here in New Zealand to harness technology, and because we're small and reasonably cohesive, we're able to utilise technology really well if people can work collaboratively together and not necessarily compete to such an extent to cause problems. And I think that collaboration is critical in order to harness data, particularly for the agricultural sector, so that farmers feel that their data is protected, that farmers feel that they've got some sovereign control, that information intermediaries use it wisely so that we can sell agricultural produce worldwide and move from a volume to a value game, which needs data underpinning it. Unless you have that, we're not going to be able to position ourselves internationally.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, maybe picking up a little bit on both Sam and Chris's comments, because I don't think it's just the dichotomy of people or technology. Sam's right, there's complexity, and that can make the technology piece hard, but it's not that I think people are also deliberately being difficult. It's that their drivers, their business drivers and their personal drivers are the things that we need to address. And, we could probably solve all this stuff overnight if we could find some way of providing the what's in it for me for each of the parties that are involved. And of course, that's the challenge, because everyone wants to capture the value in their business, and that can make things a bit difficult.
And that is the real issue, is it's about the self-interest of parties that interrupt the collaboration and stop us working together cohesively. I think it's the biggest difficulty that we face in New Zealand.
Now, theoretically, as a small country with few degrees of separation, we should be very good at being able to do that. And sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. But to what extent do we have some freedom to experiment and innovate, to be able to give that kind of comfort and transparency when we're inevitably working in a massive global ecosystem of data and very powerful enterprises and others stomping around?
So I think from the perspective of a technology provider, collaboration is the biggest thing that we do. I mean, in all honesty, we support the growers with the tech that they require. It's not that we've just made it up and we go, hey, what do you think about this? This will help you. And without that, it doesn't make any sense. And the thing is it's all about relationships, because our relationship with our customers evolves, and it evolves as it goes. We're not selling shoes. We don't just go, here's a shoe, see you later. It is an ongoing relationship. And so it's a massive part of creating the technology, using the technology, and carrying them through that data journey. Because you have to work together. Without, you just can't do it. It's not feasible any other way.
And Sam, in terms of the government, you're a work stream leader in MPI on data. How collaborative do you feel that process is between government trying to organise things with very many players out there in the paddocks, in the forests.
You're dropping me in it, eh?
I am.
No,
But don't worry,
no,
confidentiality is utterly...
I'm going to have a spin on that,
fair.
actually, because I started in this sort of policy government space, very heavily about with the 16 regional councils and MPI and MFE about 18 months ago, and when I started that journey, it felt very restricted. But because of that initiative and about 10 others, there has been almost an awakening, and there is a lot. There is meetings now every week, many of them, where cross both government agencies, regional sector, regional councils, and even more so, with Trust Alliance, which has sort of brought people together a lot. So there is a lot of cooperation going on. I think we're still trying to figure out what is the right vehicle and what is the right way of doing it, but the talks are happening, and the framework is slowly sort of coming in play of how can we do it more cohesively across, to actually achieve integrated farm planning, for example, which is on the agenda of the government, right? To allow all of these biodiversities and fresh water and all of these things to actually operate together. But that just has to take time, and all of the right conversations are happening, they're very promising.
And how does that look like for potato growers and in forestry? I'll just take two examples of how you reckon that development is going.
Well, in terms of the potato industry, 80% of our produce is what we make is consumed locally, 20% is exported. In order to compete, we've got to move from a brand promise to a brand proof. Some of the questions asked earlier was, how do we compete internationally using data? We have to move to proving rather than promising, and we've got to have data systems that underpin that, and that means gathering data from different systems and different providers in order to provide evidence internationally that our produce is grown sustainably. Otherwise, the market access is going to be so difficult that our produce will not get across the borders because we don't have our carbon values, we can't demonstrate circular economy, we can't demonstrate sustainability. One service provider on their own cannot answer that. It's a cohesion and the collaboration between the different service providers across the supply chain that will enable that. And that's the challenge New Zealand has, because we are falling behind. We've got an opportunity to make the leap. If we can collaborate to make that leap, we'll be very successful. But if we don't collaborate and work out how we get interoperability across data systems, we're going to not be able to get into markets offshore, purely and simply. Won't happen.
And then in forestry, it's obviously massive with carbon credits and the rest.
Yeah,
huge
and I mean,
complexity.
it's a great showcase there for a couple of the sort of key principles that I think you should have with an approach to design of any new data system or any interoperability system, which is don't expect that you're going to get it perfect the first time round, because you definitely won't. Don't let that be an obstacle to you trying something, because if you just sit back and hypothesize, then you'll never come up with anything at all. You have to build something, be relatively conservative with the assumptions that you make in it, and design it so that it can be improved over time. And this addresses the interoperability issue for a long time. Like a lot of the best standards that have been adopted have actually come out of a single player within the ecosystem beginning to use something and then proposing it to a standards committee. And I was trying to think of a good metaphor for this last night in terms of how hard it is to build something that can come up with the data in the first place versus how hard it is to transform it into a format that somebody else would use. And the best I came up with is, take forestry, for example. The effort that it takes us to come up with an accurate estimate of the carbon stock for any given area of forest so that we can legitimately award carbon credits, compared to the effort that it takes us to transform that into a slightly different format, is the difference between completing a power station and an electricity grid and a house, and the difference between a travel adapter plug that you have to plug into the socket to change it from European. Changing the format slightly is not the hard part. So I think alignment is very much possible there, and the key part is actually driving engagement in the first place. If everybody agrees that you should have these goals and begins to collect the data to support them, you'll get alignment because there's huge shared incentives in speaking the same language. But if nobody begins, then it'll just be this kind of wasteland of no activity, and it won't really be clear that there's any incentive to align.
Thank you. Andrew, I can see you nodding, so I want to give you a chance to say, from your perspective, because you obviously are well connected in New Zealand, but you've got an international perspective from the UK and elsewhere in addition.
Yeah, so clearly there is real benefits in kind of proposing and leading the way on standards. In other words, don't kind of sit back and wait for people to define the road for you. Chris mentioned that, you know, we're in danger of slipping behind. And as I travel internationally, everyone says to me, oh, New Zealand's doing such great stuff. Our country is in danger of slipping behind. And so I would think we all think we're in danger of slipping behind. But we do have to watch what's happening in the rest of the world, and our collaboration needs to kind of go out beyond our own shores as well.
Thank you.
I was just going to say that standards and practices are really interesting when you're setting them if they're not actually happening in the workplace, because, you know, we could create a rule around some sort of technology, but once you actually go to use that technology, you find out actually you need to change this. It has to evolve. It doesn't fit for purpose. So, you know, I'm looking at it from the practical perspective of we build our products with the customer while they're doing it and it evolves. No standard or policy is going to make us change that behavior because it is what it is. So I'm always fearful when people use those words. Don't do it in isolation, because you'll find out it's a waste of time because it won't work until you put it into practice.
Don't build the
harmful.
Yeah, totally.
Don't build the one ring to, you know, rule them all.
Yeah.
Don't talk about standards ever. You know, leave that to the standards bodies like ISO and clever people like Andrew, which is creating farm data standards. You know, that's fine. But we won't fix this problem with a single tool or single standard or single, you know, policy.
Yeah. Let me pick up on some fabulous questions coming through. This one's from Deborah Rhodes. Research source data has been hidden from farmers because it's been held by industry bodies and very closely held in that sense. Are those treasure troves that need to be broken open and that data fed back in a much more useful way to farmers?
Well, I would say yes, sorry. But I think there is a flip side to it. There's a flip side to it because maybe this research data was achieved by promising the farmer that provided the information not to share it. So, you know, there's a flip side to that. So if CRI has gone out and talked to lots of farmers and say, please give me all of your data about this particular thing so I can do a research. Now, they do provide the end result, but they don't provide the core data because most of the time they'll promise somebody, either organizations or farmers, not to share it. But I think they should, you know, so I think there's an oxymoron.
This is an important issue. There are data silos because we've got to start to change our way of thinking that data in of itself has no value. Until you're using it, until it's being used to solve real problems, then it has value. But thinking of data as I'm going to create a business model out of data, I'm going to mine it, particularly when it comes to farm data, data from the land, is a really dangerous approach to take because I don't think that's a sustainable long-term model. So there are parties who are looking to mine data, particularly in the agricultural sector. I think there's a high risk attached to that mindset. Collaboration and sharing gives you greater wealth in the long run, particularly when we're competing on the world stage. And that is the risk that I think we faced here domestically. I don't think industry bodies are responsible for holding on to data. I just don't think they've got the mechanisms to share it or to move it around. They still think of it in terms of a pile of data sitting inside a spreadsheet or a database.
And the interesting thing about it, though, is that I don't blame my growers and my customers for not sharing their data, because in all honesty, it's intellectual property. And, you know, I could give everyone in this room 2 years' worth of humidity data for a greenhouse in Mexico. Is that of any value? No, right? But the minute I throw in all the environmental stuff and then add yield into it, that's when it has value, because you've got the outcome. And if that's the secret sauce for a grower, why the hell should they share it with everyone else that they're competing against? And so it's a real fine line around when you're asking people to share their data, what is it you're asking them to share and why should they? You know, at the end of the game, because it's their business and they have a right to protect their secret sauce.
Yeah.
Andrew.
Yeah, I was going to say that said, when farmers say to me those sorts of comments that you started with, Rod, that, you know, industry bodies or software providers or somebody else is locking up their data, that doesn't tell me that there's somebody magical external who's trying to mine the data. That tells me that the farmer themselves or the grower themselves is trying to use their data in ways different than the organisation anticipated. And going back to Sam's initial response, that does need to be enabled, and we do need to somehow incentivise or provide a mechanism for those industry organisations to unlock that data in that context. Empower the growers, empower the farmers, let them make the decisions around what they're doing with their data.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah.
That's the crucial thing, is the farm data originators should have some control and some ability to dictate how farm data gets used. If they create it, they should have the rights over it, over where it goes and how it's used.
Thanks.
And ultimately the control should fall with them. Data that's derived from repurposing that farm data, sure, that makes obvious sense, but the originators of the data should have control and sovereignty over it.
Thank you. Now, here's a great cry of anguish from Chanel O'Sullivan. I hope, Chanel, you don't mind me expressing it this way. In every conference, course, event I have been to in the last 10 years, collaboration, that's in capital letters, has been a repeated ongoing cry in this sector. Yet 10 years later, it's still missing. What's holding it back? Come on, guys.
It's
Sam.
not missing.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
No. I mean, collaboration isn't black and white. It's not like it's on and off. Collaboration is increasing. I don't have time for it now, but I could name you about, 30 or 40 collaboration projects that I'm aware of, where various people, I could probably bring you about 40 or 50 people from various organizations and government that, jump around these groups and are trying to bring together sort of a cohesiveness to it. But it's not going to be black and white. It is like, it has to increase, yes. But I would say it's too strong word to say that it's not collaboration. It's just, there is 79 government agencies out there? There is how many industry bodies? There is 50,000 farmers, how many catchment groups? Where are you going to draw the line? How many software providers? There isn't like everybody can collaborate. You have to have these pockets of collaboration and then those collaborative bodies coming together and talk. And it is happening. It really is.
So that's a strong plea to go out and find a group of people that you want to collaborate with, and you need something, you've got something to offer to share, and build out from that.
Yeah, don't try and do it on your own. That's the key thing, is find collaborators to work with. Everyone's trying to do the same thing, as Sam said. There's no shortage of people that are saying, let's collaborate. It's finding the mechanisms, tools to do it so that people's personal interests and commercial interests aren't abrogated, which is crucial.
Thank you.
And following up on your comment from earlier as well, I think something that everyone can do is demand the freedom to collaborate, because often if you enter a relationship with a service provider, there'll be various protections around the purposes that you can put the data to as well as what they can put the data to. If you're the one paying the money, if you start saying, I want this to be open, I want the right to export this, to use this for another purpose, then, because everybody tries to set up a walled garden so that they can compete more easily, and that's usually one of the obstacles to collaboration, is that you've got a highly valuable proprietary data source, you don't want to share it around. Yet if you just make it table stakes for engaging with a provider, you can kind of drive it that anybody else will then be able to work with you, and it all begins to snowball.
I think we're a little bit sneaky, to be honest. So we'd been trying to force collaboration with some of the other automation people in the greenhouse sector. And it wasn't really working for us because they didn't want to share data with us in order to help their own customer, the grower. So in the end, actually, what happened is the grower, once they saw the value of sharing their data directly with us, just gave it to us directly and sort of circumvented the supplier that wasn't playing ball. So they actually in turn forced the hand of that supplier to open the door. Because again, it was their data, they wanted to see their data in a way that made sense to them. We were here to help. And so it was kind of like a reverse, forcing the situation. But I would hope it's not always going to be like that. At some point there'll be a bit of a snowball and people will be a little bit more open. And part of it's education, to be honest, in terms of just recognising we're not here to steal your bank account. We just want to help you with your business. So.
Yes, we just say. Now, very briefly, I'm just going to give Andrew the last word because it's late at night. You know, he's very patiently sat in front of a false dawn backdrop there. Andrew, your closing comment, please. You only uniquely have it. We don't have time to have closing comments for everybody else.
Yeah, and look, I love what Kylie said there, and that's exactly what I've seen too. Growers and farmers have unlocked these things if they're technically savvy or if they've got enough scale. But hey, people, we don't want to rely on them having to force it that way. Collaboration can happen. Sam's exactly right. It is happening. I'm seeing it happening internationally and nationally, but we've just got to keep our foot down on the accelerator and keep it happening.
Fine. Thank you very much indeed. And I'm going to say thank you to Sam and to Chris and to Kylie and to Nick, in addition to Andrew. I'm sorry this has been such a quick fire session, and we've only got through some of your great questions. But a big hand to our panelists, please. Thank you. Thanks.